Hello and good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Magic: The First Pioneers podcast. This podcast is all about the Pioneer format, and we keep our listeners up to date with what is new, interesting, and powerful in the world of Pioneer. I'm joined here with my co-host. I'm Kevin Pickle. I think I said that.
Yeah.
Joined here with my co-host and a special guest.
Hey, everybody. It's Ryan, the cardboard samurai out of the Tokyo area of Japan, and we have a new special guest this week.
Hey, I'm Connor, also known as ConnorMan11. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we've had Counterman on a few times before. Always happy to see him. Always happy to see when he streams. We're a big fan of his, and glad to have him on anytime we can because, especially for something like this episode, because we have some brews. We always like to, after the set has been, well, not even out yet by the time we're recording this, but once the new set drops, we always like to, brew up all the fun stuff before somebody who's much smarter than us solves the format and gets to play the winningest thing. We just, we've done pretty well on these before. I think we've called a couple of good decks before they broke out. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we did pretty good. I mean, Connor. Another reason why I wanted to have Connor on is because he's always out there trying new stuff. On MTGO, he's out there streaming it. He's taking the knocks for us. To make sure that the deck's in the most optimal build possible. So thank you for that, Connor.
Yes, that was the compliment I was trying to give, is that he does play some fun and unique decks, so we think that it would be perfect for something like a brew episode to have him on and share some of what he's brewing with this brand new set. So, Connorman, what have you thought about Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One, like, as the set as a whole?
I haven't really seen, like, that, like, we had Fable and Shieldwood, in the last couple sets as just huge, like, bangers, like cards that just absolutely dominating, in Pioneer and Standard. And I don't really see a card like that in this set. And I'm not sure, I think that's actually a good thing. I think if Shieldwood and Fable weren't printed in those previous sets, I think those sets would have been almost perfect, to be honest with you. But this set looks very, it actually looks like it's going to affect Standard a lot, is kind of my take on it. And really interested to see, it's kind of made me interested in Standard now with all these toxic cards and everything printed. So we'll see where it goes.
It's a good
Very
kind of
cool.
toxic.
Yeah.
It's the only good toxic out there.
So what we did for this episode is that usually each of us I think we each have like 2 to 3 decks. We also have a couple decks we're going to go over quickly that are either from some listeners or we think we've got one from Ashiak, who's our kind of temporary third host. So we kind of want to go through what are some of our brews from the season, some early things we think might be strong, especially decks featuring new cards, because that's what we're kind of all about here. So this is our Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One Brews episode. Ryan, do you want to kick us off with one of your brews from this season?
So, to be honest, I'm most excited about my my update. We basically, I think usually we choose like an update, it's like just a deck that's already kind of established itself and, how we would change it or how we would update it. So I'm going to go with my my Bard class, which I think I talked about, a couple months ago, I think when we were kind of like featuring the deck and we're saying it's not as good. I think we've been going about it the wrong way. I think you've kind of said in the more recently, Kevin, that it should be more of an aggro deck with a combo side game instead of people trying to go all in on the combo. And I think that's the correct way to go. So with my build, I got rid of cards like Xenagos, the Reveler. It used to have 4. My build has 2 now, so it's like sometimes you'll be able to plus and get like a whole bunch of mana to activate your Bard class, but that's not like the main thing anymore. And in it, instead of those the full play set of Xenagos, I decided to add in the new card Migloz, Maze Crusher, which I talked about on my set review, which is a new legendary creature. It's a 4/4 for 1 a green and a 1 colorless mana, which basically means it's 1 mana if you have a Bard class that's activated and in play. Otherwise, it's a huge body. It's a 4/4, and it has it comes into play with 5 oil counters, and it has 3 abilities. You pay 1 mana and remove an oil counter, and it gets Menace and Vigilance, which is great. It makes it hard to block. You want to get damage in as quickly as possible if you're playing the aggro version of this. 2 is you get to remove 2 oil counters, and it gets +2/+2 to the end of turn, so you get to pump it. Again, more damage, more quickly. And then in 3, you can remove 3 oil counters and destroy target artifact or enchantment. I don't know how often you're going to be using that. You shouldn't rely on that ability, but it's nice to have it as kind of a backup. So that's like the big addition. Everything else is the same. Bergi, Gallia. I have a Goro to give everybody haste, if I'm comboing off. Or storming off with my creatures. I still got the Grumgull in here because I like to have, just bigger power. I have 4 Hajar just because being able to sacrifice and give people more power and protecting my guys from removal is really good. You do not like Supreme Verdict, in these matchups. Karizev, some early menace. Ovia, Pashiri, just to give you an ability a creature to be able to use your Mox Amber early on. Same thing with Zergo. I got 3 of those. I have 1 Rodha because I did figure out that I do want mana from time to time. I want to be able to just get those creatures onto the battlefield, and being able to put that land into play is really good. And also I have, of course, the Bard class, Oath of Nissa. And the other new thing I have in here is in the main board, I have the 4 Copperline Gorge, which is kind of taking over for the Carplusian Forest that I had in there before. Everything else, sideboard, I still have the same Abrade, Cindervines, a Giganta. Clothis is in the sideboard now instead of the main board because Migloz kind of took its place. And then I got Pithing Needle, Rending Volley, Strangle, and Weathered Runestone. So, who wants to go first? Who wants to give us their thoughts on Bard class?
I'll start if that's cool. Yeah, so I think I actually played this deck on stream once. It was a while ago. It is interesting that we did get a new legendary creature, Migloz. The one thing I do want to point out about this, it's a 3-mana 4/4, right? But also, just, accidentally having a main deck disenchant is kind of neat, right? Like just on Migloz. It comes in with 5, you have to remove 3, which is quite a bit, but against a deck like Greasefang, just having this aggressive 4/4 that also if they go for a Parhelion, you can just kill it before it attacks, right? Is not the worst, but the problem I always had with these broadcast decks, and kind of why I didn't stick with them myself, is because it was just if you didn't draw Bard class, the deck just felt very underpowered.
And I think that's where people went wrong with the building, is that they should have built it as an aggro with that as a side thing instead of relying on it too much.
Yeah, I kind of like that as a different way to look at it. Winning games is just going legendary 1-drop into Mox Amber, and then something for 3 mana on turn 2, right? And ramping creatures in play and just going kind of nuts like that, right? Does seem pretty a decent plan without Bard class in play. The one card that I'm interested in is Oath of Nissa. That doesn't get discounted with Bard class, right?
It does.
It does,
Okay,
it's
so
all
just
legendary
free.
spells.
Okay, so it's a free draw spell. Okay.
And it gives you another creature or land, which is awesome.
Yeah, and does Amber... No, Amber's only legendary creatures and planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so...
But it does trigger as well if you play that, and then you'll get the 2 triggers off of the Bard class.
Oh, yeah, if it's leveled up, yeah. That's right. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so Oath of Nissa is still an important part of the combo plan. I don't think I'd ever dump that. Yeah, I like this. I think that Migloz, I do wish that it wasn't 3 mana for his disenchant ability, because I feel like that's the one I'm most excited about on him. And being 3 mana is kind of a lot. But definitely still excited about the card, and I think that, this will help the aggro plan. I feel like that'll make the deck even a little bit stronger that way. So yeah, excited to see this, and I think that Copperline Gorge is also another big pickup for the deck. You're always really wanting those early lands, so that's going to be big for it. And I think we're going to be saying that a lot with any of these decks we're making that are 2-color, is that we'll be excited about the addition of some of these Fastlands that we've been asking for a while. Do you want me to go next, or should I give it off to Connor Man?
Yeah, whatever. And do you guys want to just continue on with your updates first?
Sure, I'll do a real quick one. I don't think I want to go through every card choice, but I did think it was really important. One of my favorite decks, you kind of gave one of your favorites, and one of my favorites has always been the Enigmatic Incarnation deck. And I saw 2 cards right away, just as one-ofs, but I really did want to try both of them. And I've gotten a little chance to test them. They've both been really strong in this deck. Is, of course, Elesh Norn, the 5 mana, 4/7 Vigilance is pretty sick. And then, permanents entering trigger your abilities twice, and it stops the opponent's ones just randomly. So that card is kind of gross in this deck. I had already, bent my mana, done all kinds of stupid things to try and fit the 3/5 elemental that kind of did this. But this is, a much bigger body. It's much easier to hard cast it, and it also has that ability of stopping your opponent's stuff. And it even works with more stuff. I don't think that one. Oh no, that one triggered with everything. But this card's just really good in the deck. And then the other one that I have liked quite a bit is Atraxa. I did think I said during our set review that I thought that she would be worth trying out during the in this deck, Enigmatic. And it's a gross card. It is just such a huge body when you grab it off of sacking a Leyline Binding with your Enigmatic, is you just grab the 7/7 Flying Vigilance Death Touch Lifelink that usually draws you 3 cards. That is a huge amount of value.
What cards, just real quick, if you play your Atraxa, what cards are you hoping to hit?
I'm probably looking for a creature and or an enchantment that are going to be removal, but then I can also grab usually a land, and I think I've got Portable Hole as my only other possible hit. Mm-hmm. The only other thing in this deck that I did make a real change to is that Elesh Norn is great for this deck, but it's also great against this deck, and I think that you need to think about that, and you need to have some kind of way to answer it, and I think the best card for that is Binding the Old Gods. Yeah. The deck used to sometimes play some of them, but Elesh Norn doesn't stock sagas whatsoever, so you can still play Binding the Old Gods, kill the opponent's Elesh Norn, and it's something that you can sack to your own Enigmatic at some point.
Yeah, because you wouldn't be able to use any other type of removal on it. Any of the ETBs would just be totally negated, right? Like your deputies or Leyline Binding as well, right?
Yep, all of those.
Yikes.
Yeah, just permanence, huh? On Elesh Norn, wow.
I like this. I see a value pile, and I think people like value piles. And
oh yeah,
this looks very. I think people would really enjoy playing this deck.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, I already do.
I think this deck's gonna see a ton of play the first couple of weeks, and then from there we'll kind of know where it's at, on a competitive level. If it's a real deck or not, because these cards Atraxa. Atraxa is just an extremely interesting card. It's Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink 7/7. And it draws you 3 cards, but doesn't have, I guess it doesn't have haste. It's got some upside, but then it also has some, downside for being a 7-drop. So it's, I'm really not sure, how good this card is going to be, to be honest. This is kind of one I looked at and went, huh.
I was gonna say, that's why you have better reunion.
I kind of see it as, when you were sacking a Leyline Binding before, there wasn't a great value creature. Sometimes you just grab Titan of Industry, even if it's not a matchup where it's amazing, just because you want okay, it's a big body and I can destroy an enchantment, maybe gain some life, or I can make a 4/4 gain some life, and that doesn't feel amazing. I feel like I would much rather have a bigger body, a flying body, a lifelink body that's also going to find you 2 to 3 good cards.
Yeah, I thought it was Agent of Treachery.
Yeah, Agent of Treachery was another reasonable one, but that would get you 1 card. Maybe that's better against specific things where you're worried about a Karn or something. But I think that Elesh Norn is just kind of the pure value option that you can grab.
Yeah, because I wonder. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I wonder if you can fit 1 agent in the deck list somewhere.
I bet that's reasonable. I think I saw versions that were running 3/7 drops. Some of them had a coma. I saw a version that had a Titan, a coma, and an agent. I built this off of a version I think that only started with 2.
Okay.
I was gonna ask why the Radiant Flames in the sideboard. Is it always been playing that card, or?
Yeah, I kind of grabbed a stock sideboard for the most part on this one. I just needed an early sweeper, and I think that's the best one for this deck.
It's so interesting to see that in being played again. Who would have thought? Radiant Flames Converge. That takes me back.
What?
Well, you got to be a 3+ color deck.
Hey,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about it. Not too much else that's different from what this mostly was a stock list I was updating. But I wanted to call out that both those two cards, I thought they were going to be good, and they've looked at least as good as I thought they would be.
Well, something I'd like to point out here: Radiant Flames can actually be quite good versus mono white humans, because if they have a Thallium play, Guardian of Thraben, then Radiant Flames is 4 mana, so you can spend 4 colors and kills Adeline. So, Radiant Flames looking decent.
Nice,
in this
nice.
Very cool. All right, why don't we go to Connorman for one of his lists?
Yeah, do you want to talk about your update, Connor?
All right, here we go.
Is that the Grease Fang?
Oh, this Esper Parhelion, Esper Grease Fang, whatever you want to call it. This has been quite the deck. I should start off with saying that this is obviously just an updated deck, and it didn't get these really big new flashy cards like some of the other decks might have gotten. But this was already an extremely underrated deck. Like, not a lot of people, I don't really know anybody that really plays this version of Parhelion, because it's very it's Grease Fang and then it's a control deck. And it was already an extremely good deck, I top 8'd with it just, this past weekend. And then I had a friend who, he's the guy who's kind of really got the deck to where it is. I originally built it and he really, got it off the ground big time. And he got all the way to the finals in his RC, and it queued him for the Pro Tour. And that's day 2, it's 16, 17 rounds of Magic, right? And the deck is really good, and it always had these slight issues with the mana base. And then, we got some more, I think we got, what did we get? We got slow lands, and then we got some pain lands too, right?
Yeah, we got the Fastlands and the Pain Lands, the allied ones, is what we didn't have before.
Yeah, and so now we're getting more Fastlands, which, is huge for the deck, and it's Darkslick Shore, which is a blue-black Fastland, and Seachrome Coast is Azorius, white-blue. And so that's really huge for this deck because, the Pain Lands they're so medium. And then it feels really bad when, you have 2 Pain Lands in play, and then, you're casting Considers, and, sometimes those things can really do you a lot of damage. I have enough stories to sink a battleship, triple Pain Land, right? And then, lose the game because you get a Zaxxed, right? So, I think the lands are going to be just another upgrade for this deck. That this deck just continuously seems to get, these small-ish upgrades. Like, this set's obviously the Fastlands. But it's also interesting, this is a kind of deck where one of the new cards from the new set might actually be good in the sideboard, but we just don't know it yet. You have to, dig real deep. Because the sideboard in this deck, Voidwind, the Disdainful Stroke, Silence, these cards, who the hell plays Voidwind, right? But it's just really, it's been just insane in the sideboard for me. You can kill anything with Ward, and since Voidwind is 3 mana, destroy non-land permanent, can't be countered, you just don't pay the Ward cost. So it's been unreal for me in the sideboard. So I'm really looking forward to trying this deck out with the updated mana base. I did actually play a game in my tournament on Sunday, and the Pain Land should have lost me the game. But my opponent ended up punting, but I survived at 1 life because they missed lethal. So, and I had a Pain Land in play that dealt me 4 or 5 damage throughout the game. So, if that's a fast land, it's a much easier win, right? So, and that's what it is for the most part in the updated list.
So speaking.
So can you tell me what is that card you were saying in the sideboard that would be a nice new addition from 1 that you're looking at?
That's exactly kind of my point. Is we don't know, because we've been through a lot of cards in the sideboard, and suddenly it's okay, well, Voidwind is insane, right? And that doesn't see play anywhere, right? So it could just be a card that doesn't.
So once we find out what the broken card from the set is, once we find the set's Ledger Shredder, then you're gonna throw it in the sideboard of this deck, and it'll be great. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, sort of. It's more so just a card that isn't good, but for some reason fits really well on our sideboard, right? And that's kind of what this deck is. This deck can play some niche cards, who plays Silence in this format? And Silence has just been insane, right?
Against Lotus Field and stuff like that?
Well, if your opponent just has a bunch of removal, you just go fourth land, like against Phoenix, right? I've done this I don't know how many times. And they're holding, like, they have Rending Volleys and Fiery Impulses. And you just go, and you have Parhelion in the graveyard, you play a fourth land, untapped, you go Silence. So your opponent can't play spells, and then you go Grease Fang, get back Parhelion, do the thing and the stuff, get the tokens, the game's over, right? It's really good against Rakdos, too, with Fatal Pushes and Rending Volleys and all that, and Power Word Kill. It's just a one-stop shop to you have 4 removal spells, well, you have 0 for this turn, the turn that they matter, right? And yeah.
So I have something I want to say real quick. I know I like this deck. I like that it's kind of more of a controlling mid-range deck with kind of like the Grease Fang combo in there. I mean, the Grease Fang can win early on. It can also win later in the game. But like you have your Verdicts, you have your Vanishing Verse, really good removal there. And then you were talking about the mana base, about how the new Fastlands have helped out a lot. But I notice you only have 3 in this list. And I'm wondering, is Rafine's Tower necessary? I mean, is that extra card draw good? Or fixing that mana, is that good? Can't you just maybe go up to, like, I don't know, more... I would think maybe more Dark Slick Shores. It seems like you have a lot of black and blue. The double colors, maybe you don't need something slowing you down as much. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think Rafine's Tower is extremely important. Playing a tower on turn 1 is just your best possible land drop, because it is a 3-color deck in Pioneer. Like if you're playing Modern Legacy, you just play fetch lands and it's easy. But in Pioneer, we don't have access to fetches, so you just have to rely on the lands that you have in your hand or you draw, right? And, sometimes it's just 3 Concealed Courtyards, right? And just turn 1 Rafine's Tower, when you're playing cards like Shieldred and Verdict and Brazen Bulwer, that's like double black, double white, and double blue. Just one land being a one-stop shop, for all the colors is just really important in the deck.
Another question: When did Shieldred get added into this list? I didn't know it was actually in there.
Yeah, so Shieldred is a really messed up card. It was added pretty recently, the last couple of weeks. Basically, what happened is, shout out to Kaburb. He's the one going to the Pro Tour with this deck, and he was kind of saying, I want to add Shieldred, but he didn't have time to test it. He was just busy. So he basically donated, to my stream to do donation league with Shieldred. And I put Shieldred in, and Shieldred was just insane. It won me 3 or 4 games on the spot. Verdict into Shieldred. The game's over, right? Card is just wildly busted. It's an excellent plan B.
Now, Kevin, do you have anything else? I have one more question I was going to ask if you don't have anything else to say, Kevin.
No, go ahead.
I noticed you only have Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord as a way to get Grease Fang back. And I guess you're not putting as much stuff into the graveyard with like a Grizzly Salvage or Seder Wayfinder. You don't really need to have Can't Stay Away. But is that enough? I mean, are you ever worried that maybe, your Grease Fang's just going to get answered and, you won't be able to get any of your cards back from the graveyard?
Yeah, so a lot of people like to compare this deck to the Abzan deck. The 2 decks are extremely different. Abzan a lot of times is just jam. In this deck, you're kind of holding on to the Grease Fang sometimes until later in the game, so you can hold up Stubborn Annihilator, you can Brutality them or whatever. But Sorin doesn't only get back Grease Fang in this deck, he gets back Shieldred too. And I've had a lot of lines where I went, okay, play Shieldred, and then it was obvious it was going to die. They killed it. And then next turn, untap, play my 5th land, play Sorin, down tick, to get back Shielded and hold up Stubborn Annihilator. I actually did that this past weekend, and they tried to kill it again, and I stubbed it and won the game.
Nice.
Yeah. Sorin's been good as the one of.
Okay. Yeah, anything else, Kevin?
Nope, sounds good to me.
All right, move on to our brews then, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yep.
All right, so I'll go first. Okay, I think I'm going to start with my Anvil Blast deck. So I don't know if you guys can see that on my list. This is basically Black-Red Sacrifice, but going more for the, the long game. I know that, the Jund Sacrifice recently is kind of more, more value, like playing Corvold and stuff like that. This wants it just basically puts stuff that's really hard for your opponent to interact with, kind of like the old school ways, and it gets around its weakness before of the Karn by playing one of the new cards, Annihilating Glare. So Annihilating Glare is the thing I was talking about in the set review. It's 1 black mana sorcery, and you have to sacrifice a creature or an artifact to cast this, or else you have to pay extra 4 mana to do this. But it kills any creature or planeswalker, which is a good way, an easy way to get rid of Karn. And the rest is kind of stock. You know, you got your Mayhem Devils, Cauldron Familiars, some Claim the Firstborns, Village Rites, and then we're going back to the Anvil, Oni Cult Anvil, gameplay or game lines of play, I guess you could say. Witch's Oven. I got some experimental synthesizers in here because that's again another artifact that you can sacrifice and get value from. We're playing the new Blackleaf Cliffs in here, which I think really help out the deck. It gives you early play, and then some of the other new cards. I wouldn't say new cards, but where this deck diverges is we have Shrapnel Blast in here. So yeah, we have only 12 artifacts, but we're also able to make more artifacts, through Onico Anvils and stuff like that. Maybe I need more. I'm not sure. I just brewed this. And then the other new card that I'm playing is Exuberant Fuseling, which is the 0/1 Goblin with Trample, and it gets +1/+0 for each oil counter on it. And whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you get to put a counter on it. So if you're just, sacking your Cauldron Familiar 2-3 times a turn, you're putting 3 counters on it, and it's going to be like a 5/1, a 6/1, a 7/1 with Trample. It's just going to become a huge beater that you can throw at your opponents, which I think is kind of neat. I did kind of have a maybe board for this. I liked I think it was called the Vat of Rebirth that we were talking about, the 1 mana artifact that whenever you get a counter on it, or so you can put a counter on it whenever a creature dies, I think, and you remove 4 to bring a creature back from the graveyard. That'd be a good way to kind of give this maybe a little bit more long game. But otherwise, sideboard is kind of stock. Karazev, Dreadbore, Obnixilis, etc. But what do you guys think? Any suggestions? Any advice?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Village Rites is interesting over Deadly Dispute.
I felt like I wanted less mana, that's why. So I went down like 21 lands. Probably could do 20 lands.
Yeah, well,
the thing mana is better.
So the thing I really like about Deadly Dispute is that it's as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature, right? Mm-hmm. And it also makes you an artifact in the treasure token. So I think that's probably with the extra mana, because with Village Rites you have to sack a creature. You can't sacrifice an artifact. So, and I think most people were just on Deadly Dispute over Village Rites. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure. But that was the first thing I agree.
I definitely do Deadly Dispute over Village Rites here for that exact reason.
Okay. Again, I just wasn't sure about the casting cost. I didn't want to go up too much with my converted mana cost. Or my curve.
Yeah, the deck's pretty low curve right now, actually. It looks nice curve-wise. Exuberant Fuseling's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to do this, because I think I tried for a version and I ended up with something a little bit more grindy. Like, I didn't go with the Fuselage, and I did try out the one that can make you... The other one you're talking about that gives oil every time and you can bring back creatures. Yeah. And I just felt like the creatures you're bringing back weren't important enough. So I'm glad you went for this version of it. Like, this is pretty cool.
All right.
The Shrapnel Blast is a maybe. Like, depends on... I think if you're playing Shrapnel Blast, you especially need to be playing the Deadly Dispute so that you can get some more artifacts to sack for it.
Gotcha.
I also don't know if you need all of the Annihilating Glares in the main board. Maybe that's a place where, like, maybe put Fatal Pushes in the main board and do Annihilating Glare in the sideboard kind of thing.
Okay.
I actually like
I'm wondering... the Gleeful Demolition, do you guys think if I go up a little bit more in the artifact department that could be a good way to kind of give me more fuel?
1 mana 3/1/1s?
Yeah.
That card's sweet. I want it in the deck, but I'm not sure. If you go up on artifacts, you might be able to. Yeah, that card's really sweet.
Too bad we don't have any artifact lands that are colored. It's spheres, not artifacts lands.
Yeah, like how good is it with Darksteel Citadel, Target your Citadel, just nothing dies, get 3/1/1s. It's super good. I mean, hitting synthesizer is pretty nice. So like a token, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
It's definitely interesting.
Well, you guys want to move on to Kevin's next brew?
Sure, yeah, let's move on to one of mine here. So I'm going to start off with, it seems like we all talked a little bit about artifacts, so maybe I'll stay on the artifacts train. I was looking at a couple different builds of, I was really focusing on Skrelv, the new Defector Mite. I thought that card was super interesting, and one thing we talked about during the set review that I was like, ooh, maybe he'd be good in something like Ensoul, or at the very least some kind of artifacts deck. So I did try a blue-white version, I tried a mono-white version, and then where I kind of ended up with is his final version, which is white and like barely splashing red. I was looking for sideboard options in my mono-white one, and I was like, ooh, some people are splashing red just for like Showdown of the Skulls in the sideboard, and I thought that was interesting. And then I was like, maybe I'll give Shrapnel Blast a try in the main. So I'm trying a few new cards here. I definitely like the Skrelv. I think the Skrelv in this deck is fantastic. The other one that's been really, really good is Swooping Lookout. It's a 1-mana, 1/2 artifact creature that's flying and vigilance. So this thing just gets through for damage. It's a cheap artifact for the deck, which it really wanted. And it's really nice when you put like an All That Glitters or a Michigos on it because it gets through for a ton of damage that way.
Yeah.
Because we're now playing 2 white 1-mana artifacts, I did cut the Ghostfire Blades. They didn't have as many targets for this, but now I've just got a lot more aggressive 1-drops. The other card I'm trying, and I've gone back and forth on, is Skrelv's Hive. I've definitely felt that it's kind of slow, but what I do like about it is that it can spit out just a ton of artifacts and enchantments. It's an enchantment itself, and then every turn it's making you an additional artifact that can really buff up your Patchwork Automatons, I think.
Yep.
No, that one's when you cast. It's the Ingenious Myth, that's when it enters.
Yeah.
But it can also, just like you have it around for like 2 turns. It's like, oh, they're just mites. But then like you play a Michigos and something gets like +8/+8.
Yeah,
and that just gets through for so much damage.
And all that glitters.
That's what I really like. It also makes some cheap artifacts that makes Shrapnel Blast a lot more reasonable. So in this red version, I thought Skrelv's Hive was good with Shrapnel Blast. In the mono white, I was trying like the Reconfigure, or what is it called? There's like that 3-mana angel that could be cast for 6 mana as an artifact, and I just that was okay, but I liked in the red version where I've got the Skrelv's Hive for the Shrapnel Blast, worked out really well for me. The other thing, splashing a little bit of red, lets you play Giganta as a sideboard card. So that's really what this deck here is doing, is playing a lot of really low to the ground creatures, and then dropping an All That Glitters or a Michigos and making them really big for cheap.
Yeah, I like it. Super fast, super low to the ground. Probably gets absolutely destroyed by the enchantment that exiles everything.
Temporary lockdown is an issue.
Yeah.
Oof. We won't talk
Wear and
about
tear.
that.
I like that. That's a throwback. I like that in the sideboard.
Yeah, this is Skrelv's Hive is the one that I'm interested in too in the main deck here, because it does seem like it is, like the way the deck looks is it's just like sort of like Ensoul Artifact was for a bit there, was just like get damage in early in the game and then finish off with Shrapnel Blast, right? So like I'm almost kind of on board with, since you're splashing red anyways, playing 4 Boros Charm on top of Shrapnel Blast. That's a lot of burn.
That could work. Cut the Skrelv's Hive and try Boros Charm. I'm willing to try that out. And if you could do something like a Michigos and then a Boros Charm for double strike, that might be.
Oh, it does that too, yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to give that a shot. That's a good call.
Also, it can protect you from a verdict too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's what I was worried about. That, and also
Yeah.
like maybe I was going to say Mono Black as well, but Mono Black's probably not too bad because you have Skrelv.
I will shout out, I tried one Sword of Forge and Frontier in the sideboard. I did test it, but I haven't even... the one time I tested it and had a matchup to bring it in, I didn't draw it, so yet to see exactly how it is. But in theory, I'm an artifact deck. I've got a lot of things that can wield it well. It can give me protection from red creatures, and then red creatures, red burn spells. That seems okay, and it just builds value if you hit with something.
I would say one of the problems with this is just that you're just going to run out of cards. You have like a really good start. You're really hoping that you get all the glitters from Michiko's strength to kind of keep the pressure on them. But it's like you run out of cards, you're done. If your opponent
I think
turns the corner.
there are some slow, grindy decks in the format that this will completely go underneath. And then for the decks like the red decks, that's where you're going to bring in something like 3 Showdown of the Skulls. you'll bring in this sort of frontier. You've got the Giganta sideboard. You're going to try and, get a little bit more of those grindy options to help you out.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah,
think if you go ahead.
Okay. So if you move this card, it's kind of an interesting sideboard plan that I've kind of thought might be decent against Rakdos midrange, one of the most popular decks in the format. Is like, I sort of think instead of Showdown, you should just maybe play Wedding Announcement. And then you can...
That's an interesting one.
4 Skrelv, 4 Announcement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can just go Skrelv into Announcement. And then not only does Announcement, like, it's more likely to draw you cards off the Skrelv's Hive, or you just get 1/1s, and then it just pumps a team once it flips, and then all of a sudden Skrelv was making 2/2s every turn, right? So
true.
That's because the problem I have with Showdown is you're a 20-land deck, and then you're bringing in 3/4 mana cards, right? So
hell yeah, that's fair.
It's not going to be the easiest to cast. That's kind of been an interesting part of the card Showdown, is putting it in low land count decks, and then you play Showdown and you hit bunch of 2-drops or something, right? And then the Showdown, and then it's not great. So
seems like it would struggle against Rakdos, even if you do have Skrelv. You just they're 1-1ing you and getting rid of your pressure, and that's it.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue, especially with the Shrapnel Blast version. But do what you can.
Yeah.
Hope that a powerful Skrelv powering something up can get there.
Yeah, I almost want a 4th Skrelv, like the 1-mana one. That card's just so busted.
So yeah, I wasn't sure. I think that we'll be talking about a couple of Skrelv decks here, and I'm iffy on playing 4 of it because I wish it could block. Like, if it could block, I would definitely play 4 of it, because then when it's bad, I can block with it. It's a chump blocker, do whatever.
That's true.
But the fact that, like, if you're just kind of holding it up to be an answer to removal, and like, when you play another one after the first one gets killed, it's like, okay, well, now I get to wait a whole nother turn before it can do anything. It feels a little bit slow in that way. So maybe there's decks that could do 4 of them. Like, I think that if you're going to talk about what I think you're going to talk about next, I could see playing 4 in that deck. But this one, I just didn't feel like it put enough pressure on to be worth playing the 4.
Wow, and it's...
So why don't we pass it off to Connor, man? Since I think we're all kind of doing our artifact decks here. What do you got as your other one?
Yeah, so my other deck here is, for those of you who have seen my stream or know me, here we are again with the Hammertime. Some things never change. Well, we got a brand new card.
I love it.
That actually seems quite good in Hammertime. It's 2 mana 2/2, Khemba Conjuring. That's legendary. That doesn't matter. There's 4 in the deck. This very, very important piece of this deck, because it is an equipper. It's a 2 mana 2/2 in white. And whenever Khemba or another cat enters the battlefield under your control, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to that creature. And then you can 5 mana to make a 2/2 white cat creature token. And equip creatures you control get +1/+1. So the big thing here is turn 1 Colossus Hammer, right? Colossus Hammer is a 1 mana equipment that gives equipped creature +10/+10 and loses flying. And it's 8 mana to equip. So getting it in play is cheap, and equipping it is, 8 mana is a lot. Well, you go turn 1 Colossus Hammer, turn 2 Khemba, equip the hammer to Khemba. And Bob's your uncle. Go from there, right? That's kind of the plan. And then the rest of the deck is just kind of, like, obviously we're playing Skrelv, like, the 1 mana Skrelv Defecto we were just talking about. This deck might just want 4 of that card, because that card is just so good. And then you get to play, like, Lion Sash is really neat, because it's also a cat. And it's, like, Graveyard Hate main deckable. And then, very similar to the previous deck.
It's an equipment and a cat.
Yeah, and it's an equipment too. So you can, it's got reconfigure on it. So it's just an interesting card as a one-of that can do a lot of different things. And then, we're just like an artifact deck. Patchwork Automaton. I really like the Ward 2 on this card. And then, you got Ginger Boot. Ginger Boot's really good in this deck because you can make it unblockable. Right? Like, 1 mana, can't be blocked, just turn except by creatures as haste. Can be really good in a lot of matchups. Where you just go hammer it, unblockable, but, attack you for 11. Right? And then on top of that, a card from Brothers War. Pretty recent set. Loran's Escape is just a 1 mana instant that gives target artifact or creature hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And you get to scry 1, all for 1 mana. So this can protect your hammers, which is insane. So the deck looks real. I'm really looking forward to see, to testing this deck and once it sets out on MTGO and seeing if it's a real deck or not with Khemba. And there's so many different ways to build a deck. I've got like so many deck lists. This was the one that stood out to me, so here we are. But
Okay.
yeah. Oh, and also I should say, because the new cards from 1, we have 4 Skrelv's Hive and 4 Wedding Announcement on the sideboard, which is.
Yeah, you're doing that plan. I saw that. I was like, oh, yeah, he's beat me to it. That's a good call.
And, of course, Apostle. But anyways, yeah, what do you guys think?
So this is really interesting. I didn't expect you to go for the mono-white version. I thought that red-white is where I was really looking at this deck. I'm really liking the fact that you can kind of play that artifact plan, like Gingerbrute in this deck seems like it could be very powerful. If you're threatening an unblockable haste creature with Sigarda's Aid and Hammer, like that just makes your opponent's sorcery speed removal totally useless, as well as blockers totally useless. So that could be powerful. I do wish, just because some of the new cards in red seemed really interesting for me. So have you checked out Cacophony Scamp?
I'm not good with names, but I've seen it.
Okay, that one's the red 1/1 Goblin Warrior that when it deals combat damage to a player, you can sacrifice it if you do Proliferate, which doesn't matter. Well, the Proliferate doesn't matter. And when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. But this is a 1/1 that if you equip a hammer to it, it's now an 11/11 that also deals 11 damage when it hits a player. So it can be, a turn 2 kill with this thing, literally, because you can either have a Sigarda's Aid and equip a hammer, and then that's 22 damage, or you can do a hammer and a Resolute Strike because it happens to be a warrior that will equip it to it and then also do, like 26 damage on turn 2.
Yeah, so I have looked at that card actually, and we did try brewing up a warrior Resolute Strike list, but the problem is Resolute Strike is just so medium. Like, I really want to start with Khemba because, Khemba's the closest we've ever been in Pioneer to Pure Steel Paladin, right? Because you can 5 mana make 2/2s, right? There's a chance that you can just grind later with a Khemba in play, right? We'll see how relevant that really is, but that's 2 different decks basically. That's the other one's a Warriors deck with Resolute Strike, which is one I'm also probably going to play too. And yeah.
I mean, you get better mono with the mono white. I'm not sure if I feel the treasure vaults. Those seem a little bit strange.
Well, they're for Ingenious Smith, but yeah,
Oh, yeah.
The artifact count was just a little low.
Okay.
They might not be great, but I'm considering going down to 3, but, I'm just so worried Smith is going to whiff.
Understood. Yeah, that's the other thing, I guess, with red, you could also play fighter class, but I feel like that's slightly worse than Open the Armory.
Is it? Why is it worse?
It's slightly better.
Maybe, yeah. It's about the same.
Because it's same mana cost, except you have to play a red and the white, and then you get to find something, put it into your hand, and that's the first level, and then after the second level, if you upgrade it, it's like what? They cost 1 to equip? Or 1 less, I think?
Well, 2 less to equip.
Yeah, 2 less.
Yeah, I would think that'd be one of my changes, is to switch the Open the Armory for the fighter class.
Well, that would have to be splashing red then.
Oh, this is mono white.
That's the difference. This is mono white.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look at that mana base, 13 planes.
Well, so the other thing I would have liked about red white is that I like the new Nahiri, and not many people seem to, so I thought that'd be a place to try it out. But I will have to do my own testing on that, I guess.
I'll have to update the name of that then. I put red white Hammertime. I thought it was gonna be Hammertime that with red white, so it's interesting.
I started with mono white, but yeah, Nahiri is also another card. That's in a different deck I haven't really completed yet because these decks are so difficult to build.
Mm-hmm.
But
I understand. Yeah.
I have another question. Did you consider any other equipment in the main board? So you have only the Class Hammer, Ghost Fire Blade, and Shadow Spear and Maul of Skyclades. Like, for example, I think my last season I was talking about the Thrun Battlesuit that was like 2 and equip 2, I think. Or maybe it was equip 1, and then it's like you get +2, or you get plus X equal to the amount of artifacts, or not artifacts, equipment that you have. I think
it's called Thrun Battlesuit. I don't know.
I think it was Thrun Battlesuit.
I can't.
Okay, I've got a different idea. What about Kayla's Rex? What is it? Kayla's
Reconstruction. Yeah.
Ooh,
maybe
Kayla's...
instead of like Ingenious Smith or something.
Yeah, that's...
No, maybe that's a sideboard. Is just like you're in the red black deck, and like that's probably a miserable matchup, and you just like, I'm just gonna look at the top 7 cards, and I found a Khemba and a Skrelv and a Maul of the Skyclaves. Like now I'm rolling.
I think
Kayla's
I would
is
probably go up
interesting.
to 4 Lion Slash with the 4 Khembas, just because you get more of the cat synergy there.
So the other thing that I don't see here, but I have seen in some other people who have been brewing with this list, is how do you feel about Mox Amber in these lists? Because we do have Khemba and we do have Skrelv that both turn it on at very cheap mana costs.
8 is not enough.
You think, or a 7 even in your version. You think that's not enough? Okay.
I just don't think that's enough. There's quite a few things, if you guys don't mind me touching on, that you guys brought up. The first one I can remember right now is the 4 Lion Sash. The problem with Lion Sash I have is it's really not good.
Oh, it's so bad. I don't like Lion Sash.
horrible.
I mean, like I like a one of Lion Sash here. I don't like it otherwise in general.
I've played it more times than I'd like to admit, and it's just been absolutely horrible. A lot of people compare it to Scavenging Ooze and everything. It's nowhere near Scavenging Ooze. I really want it to be a good card. It's just not. But as a one of tutor target here, randomly just have against like Greasefang decks or whatever, it's pretty cool. For their...
And it's tutorable as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So just not playing the one of just feels, it just feels wrong not doing that.
Okay.
And then the other equipment you brought up there, I've been kind of up and down with the equipment. I'm not actually that huge on Ghostfire Blade.
Okay.
Because the equip cost is, it's 3 to equip unless
only
it's
equips
colorless, right?
on a couple things.
Yeah, it's just Ginger Boot and Automaton. Like Skrelv is not colorless, even though it's an artifact. So probably could cut the one Ghostfire Blade, and just jam something else in the main deck, over Ghostfire Blade. But yeah, there's really not... The equipment in Pioneer is not great, to be honest with you.
I like the Eater of Virtue in some of the versions, but that's I like it more in like the ones that have haste and stuff. But...
Yeah, I really like Kayla's Reconstruction, actually.
Yeah, I think that might be worth looking into.
Yeah, and then I probably have to go down to Treasure Vaults if we're playing a card that's triple white.
Oh yeah, that's
Probably go down to 2 or 3. But it does get tough. Like that's the thing about building these hammer decks. Same with like the Boros one. There's always just kind of like this problem. Like you're looking at a deck and you're like, oh, like this one. How many artifacts do you have for Genius Smith? Where you've got, you have the 7 equipment right now in the deck, and then you get Ginger Boot, Skrelv, Automaton. That's what 4, 8, 11. Lion Slash is 12. So 12 and 7. So without Treasure Vault, you've only got 19, which is not a lot. Looking.
Well, what if you
top
cut
4.
Ingenious Smith for Kayla's? Is that enough creatures in the deck?
I don't think so. 16 seems really low.
16's okay, actually. Like, I'm just going off of how many creatures, you normally would want, like, in a Modern Powers deck you want. 15 to 16. And I think it's similar in Pioneer too. But I'm not sure we want to play Kayla's in the main deck. I think your game 1 plan is to just, hey, look, I'm a hammer deck. Here we go. Right? And then post board you can go, okay, my opponent's going to have, a Braids and Rending Volleys and, and all the Fatal Pushes and Power Word Kills and Stomps. Right? So let's just go Skrelvs into Wedding Announcement.
Into Wedding Announcement,
And then
yeah.
just...
I noticed something else. Another new card that I think you absolutely need at least one of, probably even in the main, is Ossification.
Yeah.
It's the new, enchanted basic land you control
I know that
exiles
one.
any creature or planeswalker. So A, that can get rid of your Karns on the other side. B, it's an aura, you can find it with Open the Armory.
That's true, you can find it with Open the Armory. So that's probably what not Shadow Spear. That's probably what
Ghostfire
Ghostfire
Blade
Blade
could be.
becomes, yeah. That's actually quite good. And we're playing 13 planes. I'm probably going to go up to 14 and cut a Treasure Vault.
That makes sense.
And then just try and figure out the artifacts, I guess.
I was trying to see if there was any of the like 4 Mirrodin equipment that would make sense to be one more like searchable equipment, but that's where I saw like, oh yeah, Ossification should probably be in there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, the other thing too with this deck is I can't think of the card right now, but it's from Brothers War. It's 1 white mana, sorcery, destroy target creature. I think with mana value less than or equal to the number of basic planes you control.
True, that is an option probably for you.
Yeah, we'd have to go way up on planes though, like cut the treasure vaults, and that would be less an artifact deck, more just play mono white. It's also a way to go, like cut the smith, cut the patchwork, and then just play like other good mono white cards. Like maybe recruitment officer or something as a 1-drop, and then play more basic planes, and you can play it as your removal because.
True, the patchwork might be awkward too, since there's not that many artifacts to cast. Maybe.
Yeah. That's true. It's cast. Really, it's just there because it's Ward 2.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Which in your hammer deck can be very helpful to go, turn 2 patchwork, and then how does your opponent kill it if it's their turn 2, right? So. Yeah.
You guys.
I'm very excited to see where this deck ends up because I think that we have the power now to play Colossus Hammer, and I think Khemba's definitely a part of it. I think Skrelv will definitely be a part of it, and I agree that there's a lot of brewing to do after that.
Yeah, for sure. And you could play Block for Thoughtseize. There's just a million things you can do.
So, is it okay to move on to the next one?
Yeah. I know you've got to go somewhere not too long from now, so we can't take all night. But let's go through your last list, and then let's my last list, and we'll quick hit the one from Ashiok, I think.
So my last list is Boros tokens, and we were talking earlier about Skrelv's Hive. This is playing Skrelv's Hive, and basically this is kind of a control deck that has a bunch of tokens as their finisher. It's playing Fateful Absence, Settle the Wreckage, Deafening Clarion, Doomscar, also Wandering Emperor, just because it also makes tokens. And it has a lot of enchantments that make the tokens. So I got 2 Legion Landings, I got 4 Skrelv's Hive, I have 4 Wedding Announcements, 2 Outlaws Merriment, which is the one from Eldraine that puts one in random, either a 3-1, a 2-1, or a 1-2 into play with haste. And then I also have Assemble the Legion, which is the Ravnica, I think it's Ravnica or Gatecrash 5 mana enchantment that you put a muster token on top, not mustard, but muster, and equal to the number. So during your combat step, equal to the number of muster tokens, you get a 1/1 red and white soldier. So it just gets bigger and bigger, keeps throwing more and more creatures at your opponent. And because we're making all these creatures, I also have a Gideon, which can either attack as a big 5/5 indestructible guy, or put more tokens in, or if you have a huge field, just give everybody +1/+1 and swing for lethal. Another new card that I had in here that I forgot, another token maker is Urabrask's Forge. So it's kind of like Assemble the Legion, but it's 3 mana, it's 2 in a red artifact, and at the beginning of combat you put an oil counter and then create an X1 that has trample and haste, and X is a number of the oil counters on the forge, and you have to sacrifice it, but still it's going to be a 1/1 on the first turn, a 2/1 on the next turn, a 3/1 on the next turn of fortune. So you're going to put pressure on your opponent. Everything else is going wide. This is kind of just pushing through damage. The longer it sits on the board, the worse situation your opponent's going to be in. And then sideboard, I got an Elspeth in there to make a couple more tokens, also to maybe kill stuff in mono green maybe. And yeah, that's about it, I think. So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on tokens, Kevin?
I think Wedding Announcement is a good card.
Okay.
I have said my piece.
Okay.
Shocking.
No, you're like, are you gonna make fun of me if I do tokens again? I was like, no, I won't make fun of you as long as you don't do black-white tokens. I think there's a lot of cards here that I'm like, I love Outlaws Merriment, but I don't think it's been close to playable. I love Assemble the Legion. I don't think it's close to playable. A lot of these cards I just don't think make the cut. The curve here is really, really slow. You've got a lot of 4 or 5 drops.
Which is why I'm playing all the removal.
Your curve kind of starts at 3. I just don't you're playing removal, but you don't have any card draw. So if they're, you're not going to win any kind of mid-range or grindy matchup because they've got if they've got a 2-for-1, that's really going to hurt you. So I don't know. Sure, you've got a lot of enchantments which are hard to remove, but I think even when you get one of these big Assemble the Legion or something, it's going to be a really long time for that to kill. So I think you'll have trouble with the aggressive decks, and I think you'll have trouble with the slower decks.
Would Chain to the Rocks and Portable Hole not be enough?
out of the sideboard.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, they're 1-for-1s, so like maybe. But if your opponent's dropping a bunch of fast humans, or if they're dropping a bunch of red aggressive creatures, they might just be able to overwhelm you there. Yeah. Urabrask Forge is an interesting card. I wouldn't mind seeing if that can do something. I'd probably be more interested in the fact that it makes an artifact. It sacrifices each turn. Maybe throw that in your other artifact deck. I can't get behind a lot of the it's just very slow. There's a lot of very slow things in here, so I can't get behind the rest of it.
Yeah,
Wedding Announcement's really the only card that can draw me cards.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to attack. So maybe...
You got anything to say on this, Connor, man?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar to what you're saying.
Did we lose him?
I don't know.
Oh, no, he's muted.
Yeah, he's muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the first thing that stood out to me, kind of similar to what you were saying, was just the mana cost. When you look at the list, it kind of stands out. There's a ton of 4-drops and 5-drops in the deck right now, and that's just not really, decks that are doing that are usually just playing Fires of Invention, right? So you can go Fires into a 4-drop, and then next one you can play like 2 5-drops or something, right? Or whatever, or call Yorion and do stuff like that, and it's kind of a reason why the decks are playing Fires and then expensive cards, is because it's just kind of tough to do in Pioneer. Decks are just going to get underneath you in multiple different ways. Like against Greasefang, you're going to have Assemble Legion, and Urabrask in hand, and they're just going to turn 3 you, right? And then,
yeah, that's
going to feel bad unless you have one of your 2 Faithful Absents, right? Then...
So, does it show that I don't know how to make control decks?
Well, you didn't put blue in them, so that was your first mistake.
Yeah. I will never put blue in my control decks.
No, I know.
Honestly, I just go more mid-range. Like, just play a mid-range game, and then, you can throw in some cheaper...
Maybe some creatures
spells.
that make tokens as well.
Like, I think you really want Bonecrusher Giant.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That card's just so busted. And then, like, on top of that, you can play, oh god, I have to remember this name. Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
You can play Fable, you can play Karn.
Insane.
Fable doesn't have... I was thinking Fable, but it's like it doesn't have any targets. Except for the other tokens.
Maybe instead of white, you can splash black and play...
See, we're just changing... it's just a totally different game now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough. Like, you've got a lot of lands, too, is also... that's... Not that it's an issue. Like, you probably need a lot of lands, but having that many lands without ways to filter your draws, without ways to card draw, it's going to be a lot of dead space in your hand.
Yeah.
Fable would help with that. I think, maybe you could try and go with something with, like, Fire's Invention and Karn wouldn't be unreasonable here.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if that's an Urabrask's Forge deck, which I feel like is the new card that you're trying to build around here.
Well, do you want to move on to your last one? Because I got to...
Sure, yeah. Let's move on to my last one here. Yeah, understood. I can go pretty quick on mine as well, which is a blue-black Rogues deck. I'm really excited about 2 of the new cards that are in this deck. Actually, I've got 4 new cards in this list.
Wow.
So the main one is there's a rogue that's new. It's the only rogue in the set. It's a 2/1 that's unblockable for 2 mana. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets an oil counter. And whenever it deals combat damage, you can remove 2 oil counters. And then the next instant or sorcery spell you cast that turn, you copy it. Which is pretty sweet. It's just a 2/1 unblockable is fine. And then getting some free spells is free spells. So nothing wrong there. And then the card that I really liked is Kaito. I think that this card, maybe almost a little bit of a sleeper. Probably not because it doesn't have enough homes, but I think that it's very powerful. In practicing, like, it's just so easy to, like, shut down 2 creatures from attacking, or, plus and -2, plus the next turn and -2 the next turn. Like, it's very easy to kind of turn this thing on, even with just a little bit of help, making tokens or, like, one mana creatures that you're happy to recast, like Thea's Guild Enforcer. And it ends up doing a lot of really powerful things. I also really like with Kaito, the minus makes 2/2 Death Touch creatures that drain for 2 when they die. Those Death Touch creatures are just such a pain for red-black to deal with, because, like, it blocks a Graveyard Trespasser, or, like, it blocks a Bonecrusher Giant, like, it blocks a Shieldred. They really just, like, can't attack through those very easily. They don't have a good way to... Like, they can spend a real spell to remove them, get drained for 2, but that's not the best use of their resources, so it ends up being a really good card there. Finally, the other one that I'm trying out is Jace. I was trying out Into the Story, and it just wasn't doing it for me. Like, it was very slow. Sometimes it would just sit in your hand because you didn't have it turned on. Other times, like, it'd be like, okay, yeah, I've got the 7 cards in my graveyard or whatever, but it's still 4 mana to cast, which felt like taking your whole turn off just to draw cards. So I tried Jace instead and ended up rather liking him. This deck very much cares about milling your opponent's deck, as well as it's not that hard to hit the point where this can draw you 3 cards, even more than once. So that's pretty cool. And otherwise, it just, it's kind of a grindy card. It shuts down some opponent's creatures and is, maybe it's not a 3 of, that's what I have right now because I wanted to really be able to test it. But I think it's a worthwhile card. It plays with the kind of mill strategy of rogues and is pretty powerful. And of course, last thing that's new is Darkslick Shores.
Yeah. I was looking for that. Yeah. Okay.
Only other maybe weird choice in here is I've got a couple Rotten Reunion.
Yeah,
I had seen some Cling to Dust. I was trying this instead. There's a couple things I like about it. It's very cheap to give you counters on your Mercurial Spelldancer, so you can like easily cast this twice and then double up a Drown in the Lock. That kind of thing is very powerful. It also makes the Decayed tokens are very nice with Kaito because you can, you deal the 2 damage with the token and then you bounce this token to your hand that would have died anyways. Very easy to turn on his passive that way.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big thing I was going to ask. I was going to ask, this deck seems a little bit like, yeah, you do have the mill thing, but it doesn't seem like it's going all in on the mill thing. And I'm wondering if you're going to have enough pressure on your opponents.
I don't think you ever kill them with mill.
Yeah.
I think that you get to the point where you've got 8 in the yard, and that makes your Thief Guilds Enforcers a 3/2 Death Touch Flash. It makes your Throwing Thought Thief give everything +1/+0, and it turns your Drawn in the Locks into a hard counter spell.
Are you going to have enough pressure on your opponent? That's what I'm worried about. Like, if you're not going to be able to kill them fast enough, or you're not going to be able to mill them fast enough, it feels like you're just not going to be able to finish out games well.
Yeah, I think so. Thieves Guild Enforcers, Soaring Thoughts Thief, that hits for like 6 damage if you've got 2 of those in play. Like, you've got some stuff that does hit pretty hard.
Okay. Connor, what do you think?
There's a few things that jump out. I guess I'll touch first on what you were just talking about with is this deck going to be fast enough? There's only really 12 creatures in the deck. Brazen Borrowers, it is a creature, but, it's kind of more a utility card. That's generally how it's played, because it doesn't really block most things. And it's a 3-mana 3/1 with flying, which is fine, right? But like your main cards are the other rogues, and with only 12 of them, it looks kind of like a mixed bag because you've got these, 2 4-mana planeswalkers. I guess one could be 3 mana, going to pay 2 life. And then you have some like low to the ground, more aggressively slanted creatures in Thieves Guild Enforcer and Thought Thief, and Spelldancer. So it is, there does seem to be maybe some tension there with the 4-mana walker and then some 1 and 2 drops, right? And then the other thing I noticed too is only 2 Thoughtseize. Where's the other 2?
Well, yeah, I didn't want to go full on to Thoughtseize. I just had never liked 4 Thoughtseize when I was playing rogues in the past. Just it kind of felt like you've got other things you need to be doing early on. Maybe it should just be 4 of. Maybe I'll cut a Jace and something else, and that's where it should end up.
Yeah, I'm really not huge on Rotten Reunion.
Okay. I think you can't not play some kind of Graveyard Hate in the main because this deck would always lose game 1 to Greasefang and to Phoenix. So it's kind of between that or Cling to
I'd go with Cling to Dust probably.
That's fair.
Yeah, okay.
I like the card draw.
No, I'm honestly not sure which one to play, Rotten Reunion or Cling to Dust. But yeah, is there any other rogues you can play? Like on top of the...
There's like the Wind Robber. You could play some higher mana value ones, but there's not really much else at low mana value. So like that's why people were playing it and it wasn't great. And I felt like, a new 2-drop for the deck might have been enough to make these 2 creatures get there, but understood if it doesn't. Maybe some Mutavaults would also help.
Yeah.
Those
are
that's
also rogues
used for the Thought Thief.
I don't think this is too... how can I say? It's not too hungry for mana.
Well, Drawn in the Lock's a tough one.
You have your Urabrask too, so that helps out.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
That is true. The old Mutavault Drown on the lock deck, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I don't want to stay too long on this one, so we can move on. Did we have? Did you have any more Counterman? Otherwise, I did want to talk about one. I think just from Ashiok, just a quick call it out.
Yeah.
He gave us a few lists that he's working on, but I wanted to call out. He's got a scales list. Can you just let me see if I can repost this in our
Pod
chat.
Live chat, yeah, put that down there.
Yeah, let me post
yeah, and
it in there.
I know there's a couple other people that posted deck lists as well, and if we didn't get around to it today, we will try to maybe include some of them in the in our post, so you'll be able to see some of the other user submitted decks there.
Yeah, I'd really wanted to try something like this, and he beat me to it. So 8 dorks, Bloated Contaminator or Nissa Voices Zendikar on 3. Ranger class definitely seems great. Vivian definitely seems great. Vorinclex in the main seems totally reasonable. Werewolf pack leaders maybe the only question mark because that doesn't have anything to do with plus one counters. If you are
Draw
going
cards.
all in on the hardened scales, maybe I'd like the Voracious Hydras in the main instead. But I think Bloated Contaminator turn 2 into Vivian turn 3 just seems like so incredibly hard to beat that I want to try something like this out.
Yeah. I mean, people will just say, why aren't you playing Devotion if you play it, though? Anytime you play a non-green deck anytime you play a green deck that doesn't have Nykthos, people are like, why aren't you playing Nykthos?
More reason let's get rid of
Yeah.
Karn.
Well, the deck does have Nykthos, right?
Yeah, it does
Or
have
Nykthos, but like
You just
Karn,
don't have
Yeah, but like the actual
not
deck,
Devotion.
package.
Yeah. Sorry, I just noticed. Dang, it is another
The
Nykthos.
yeah, 4 Nykthos does seem a lot for this list that isn't, needing it, but it is still, I'm sure, nice to be able to pull like an Ulamog. I don't know about Decimator or Provinces. I think I like the Tarisk more. But yeah, that's this list. I want to make sure to give it a shout out.
Yeah,
here.
we'll post that hopefully in our links as well.
Anything to add here, Connor? Otherwise, I'm going to bring us to the end of our show.
Yeah, it's another. This is a classic, there's only 4 hardened scales in the deck, and that was kind of the problem with the hardened scales deck before, is like they didn't turn 1 hardened scales, so we probably win. Right? That's kind of been the way scales decks operated before. Like without hardened scales, the deck was just extremely underpowered. Now this deck is a little different because you're also playing Elvish. You're playing Elvish Mystic Lino Elves, right?
Yeah.
Which is also a good turn 1, but there's just some cards in the deck like Pack Leaders and the Mystics that don't have anything to do with 1/1 counters. And then you're playing Hardened Scales, which is just a non-creature enchantment. So my worry is that you'll get into games where you have like a Mystic, a Pack Leader, and Hardened Scales, right? And then, maybe you have 1 or 2 other,
Well, Ranger class puts counters on them.
Yeah, Ranger class does
Yeah, I
too.
think
Just versus all the removal.
I'm sure it's torn. It's tough here because like Werewolf Pack Leader is the only card draw, but at the same time, like maybe those should just be 3 Voracious Hydras because that's great with Nykthos.
Yeah, like my problem is though, just like a deck like Rakdos can just kill all of your creatures that that are good with counters on them. Like they can kill, they can push your Contaminator, and and your wish cards and stuff like that, and just leave you with pack leaders and stuff like that in play, right? And Hardened Scales is essentially, it's not a creature, it's an enchantment, right? So you're then minus a creature to make another creature bigger that just is going to get fatal pushed, right? Like unfortunately the format just comes down to like Rakdos and what's your plan versus that deck, right?
Yeah.
And then branch out from there.
Yeah, especially with it being like a full wish board, I think that you don't have any answers to the Rakdos matchup in your sideboard. That would be tough.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's 15 wish targets, huh?
Maybe the Voracious Hydras come in, but yeah.
Yeah, well.
All right, we'll talk to Ashiok about it. Tell him why he's wrong. Anyways, that's going to bring us towards the end of our show here. Guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to these brews for the new set. If you liked hearing this kind of content, if you want to see more, follow us on Twitter. It's the best place to keep up to date, and we are at MTG Pioneer on Twitter. You can find a link to our Discord there if you want to be even more in touch and talk to us about all kinds of Magic things. Check out our links from the show. All of that is in our Discord.
And you guys can find me on Twitter as well at Yo Japan Hobbyist, and we have had a lot of people putting their list in the deck list section. We got some pretty sweet ones up there. Like I said, I'll try to include some of them, but if you want to see them all, definitely stop into the Discord and check out our deck list channel to see what people are brewing with. And Connor, any shout outs, any promotions?
Yes, first of all, shout out to Kebab. for the Esper list and going to the Pro Tour. And then I'm a streamer. So, I stream around 3 times a week, usually Tuesday to Wednesday in the evening Pacific time. My Twitch handle is ConnorMan11 with one N. I play a ton of Pioneer. And, I have a Twitter too, same as my Twitch, just ConnorMan11. And it's just almost all Pioneer, a little bit of Modern mixed in. I might be getting into Standard because the new set looks pretty sweet for Standard. Being able to play, Poison counters or Infect with Toxic seems great. But yeah, that's me.
Seems like fun. Yep, absolutely. Go ahead and follow Connorman. He's one of my favorite streamers. He should be one of yours too if you care about Pioneer. And that's what we are. We are the First Pioneers podcast, and we are all about the Pioneer format, keeping our listeners up to date with what is new, interesting, and powerful in the world of Pioneer. I think that's what I usually say near the end. And then, that's going to bring us into our show, and we are the First Pioneers, and it's getting worse every week.
All right.